Hello everyone, my name is Yogan. I am the captain of the Shire of Mynydd Seren with the Society of Creative Anachronism, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about a flight shoot. We are having an event in September, middle of September, called the Nine Worthies, a contest of arrow and steel. We are fortunate at this event in Brown County State Park, Indiana, to have about 400 yards of range space. So since we have such a large range, we decided we would make flight shooting part of the competition. However, we've never been in an SCA event where flight shooting has been done. We've never ourselves done flight shooting. We've never seen how far our bows can shoot. So we need to do some experiments to figure out how we were going to do the scoring and to figure out how much space we would actually need for it. And we thought, as a good introduction to the event and just for fun, to sort of make a video out of our experiment and our flight shooting. And one of the things that makes us able to do this is that we actually have a large range of bows that we ourselves own. And you can actually see all these bows here behind me. Most of them are horse bows. Most of them are on the upper end for SCA power scale. Most of them are 40 pounds or plus in draw weight. And we're just going to shoot all of these and just see how far we can throw arrows. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit about these bows, their design, and a little bit about how we're going to set up this experiment to get a good range and figure out what these bows can do, and about what we expect and all of that to sort of come out of it. First, I thought I'd talk about some of the bows. All of these bows are made by Saba Grosser in Hungary. They're high quality bows. They're decent bows. I enjoy shooting them. We have 5 Saba Grosser bows behind me. This first one here is of a Hungarian shape and design. It's a good entry-level horse bow. Price is very reasonable. One of the things you can see, and almost all horse bows have this, is this rigid tip here. This is called a saya, also called a lathe, or rigid or static tip. This tip is called static because it doesn't actually bend when the bow is drawn. The tip itself is not active, it doesn't move at all. It's just a static portion. And most horse bows have a static tip of some variable size. And this particular bow, as you can see when you look at the limbs, has a leather or fish scale, I can't remember which, covering, it might be both actually, around the limbs. And the reason is because underneath this limb, and you see a lot of the entry-level horse bows have this, is actually fiberglass. The bendy portion of the limb is fiberglass, and you can see it's very flat. That's what you'd expect out of a fiberglass limb. These are a good entry-level bow. This one's 45 pounds, and we'll be shooting this one to see what it can do. On the next level up for Saba Grosser are these biocomposite bows. Now, these bows are essentially identical to a horn bow. The backing is sinew, which you can see here. The belly of the bow is animal horn. And in the center, there is a layer of wood, usually ash. However, what gives these things the term biocomposite rather than true composite or horn bow is that these actually have fiberglass reinforcement through the limbs, and they're a little bit flatter than a true composite bow. But they perform very, very well, and they're very, very beautifully designed bows. This particular one is a Scythian design, and 2 things to note about the Scythian design is there is no rigid tip, there is no saya or lathe at the end. The tip bends all the way to the point where you put the string. It also has this very distinctive set back handle, giving it that sort of classic Cupid bow shape. Very small bow. This one is 58 pounds in draw weight. Another type, and this is also a biocomposite bow, is a Turkish Traditional bow. These bows are very, very C-shaped when unstrung. They have about a medium-sized saya. They also have these string bridges, which set the string a little off, giving it a little extra turn when the bow is released. Now, the cool thing about these bows in relation to what we're doing right now is very traditionally these bows are used for flight shooting. The Turkish have a strong flight shooting tradition, and so it'll be interesting to see what this bow can do. This bow is 50 pounds in draw weight. Another biocomposite bow. This bow is an Assyrian bow. It's a bit bigger, as you can see, than some of the other bows I've shown you. And its static tip is actually not a separate piece. It actually seamlessly blends in with the limb of the bow. But it still does have a rigid end here. It's just much smaller. You can see the horn is very beautiful on this bow. And this bow is 43 pounds, and it's quite a fast bow, so I'm interested in seeing what this one can do as well. This is also a Hungarian bow, and the reason I wanted to show you this bow towards the end is that this is actually a horn bow. So this is a true composite bow. There is no fiberglass reinforcement in this. Actually, there is no unnatural use of materials at all, or modern materials at all. Even the glue is fish bladder glue used to make this bow. This is a very, very nice bow. This is about as high-end as a horse bow can get. And one of the things I wanted to show you in relation to the other Hungarian so the bottom is the horn bow and the top is the fiberglass bow, and you can see how much thicker the limb is on the horn bow. And this is because of the materials used, because of the sinew and because of the horn all put together. It should make a thicker bow. Now these bows are animals to their own right. They shoot differently in different conditions, different humidity, different heat. They hold their shape very, very interestingly after you shoot it for a while. The longer you shoot it, they shoot differently. So these are beasts to shoot and behold, but they're a lot of fun, and it feels good to shoot a bow of this particular design. This one is 75 pounds, so it is a very, very heavy bow, and I've never shot it at a flight shoot or anything like that, even a clout shoot. So it will be interesting. Another type of bow we're going to test, just for comparison, is a standard English longbow. This one's laminated. The back end of the bow is bamboo, and the belly is Osage. It's a very pretty bow. I've had it for a very, very long time. These bows, as many in the SCA know, are quite tall. They have very small brace height. Should be fun to shoot. I won't be shooting this particular bow because about a year ago I started shooting thumb ring, and I don't shoot three fingers anymore, so we'll let somebody who's got a bit more experience with three fingers shoot this bow. All the rest of the bows will be shot traditionally, as horse bows were, with a thumb ring or with a thumb release. So that's all for the bows. Now, one of the things that's interesting is how the efficiency of a bow works and how far an arrow actually fires. Now, a lot goes into how far an arrow goes. And a good portion of that, and I want to make sure it's very, very clear, is the archer's skill. How clean is your release? How used to the bow? How comfortable are you? How steady is your arm? That all goes into how far an arrow goes. So that's very, very important. Most of these bows will be shot by me, so that will be fairly consistent throughout them. Another thing that goes into that, of course, is the weight of the bow, which is in relation to the design and the strength of the archer, but also the efficiency of the shape and design of the bow itself. And for example, if you have a bow like this Scythian bow here, no static tip, it's very small, the limbs are very, very lightweight. In theory, these bows are very efficient at shooting very lightweight arrows because the limbs move so quickly because they're light. However, when it comes time to shoot a heavyweight arrow, they tend to slow down quite a bit and lose a lot of that efficiency. If you juxtapose that with one of these Hungarians, which has a big thick saya and nice thick limbs, this is going to be very low on the efficiency for transferring energy to a lightweight arrow because the limbs are going to slow down the speed of the bow. But for a heavyweight arrow, for a war weight arrow used for penetrating armor, which would have a very, very heavy tip and be a very heavy arrow, these would be much better at transferring that energy into them. So we're going to sort of test that by shooting different weight arrows. And here's our test arrows. One of them is a 5/16 arrow. Both are made of Port Oxford cedar with 3 fletches, very, very similar design. This one will be 5/16 with a lightweight tip, probably about half the grain weight as this one, which is 11/32 with a bodkin tip. So this one's going to be much heavier. And just for the fun of it, we're also going to shoot a very traditional arrow that's very, very heavy in weight. This is a bamboo arrow with a bone knock, 4 fletch and straight fletch. The tip has a brass tip, but I filled the hollow portion of the bamboo with brass as well to give it that extra weight. So this is probably going to be in a 700 or 800 grain weight for an arrow. So approaching what I would think a war weight arrow would be. And we're going to shoot this one too, just to sort of get into comparison, and well, just for fun, because this is kind of a fun little experiment. So those are the bows, those are the arrows. All that's left now is to go out and do some shooting.
Shoot!
For the light arrow, weighing in about 300 grain weight, the Scythian bow actually shot at the furthest, a little over 500 feet, followed shortly by the Turkish and Assyrian bows. The interesting surprise there was the Assyrian, the lowest weight bow, at 43 pounds of draw weight, actually shot the third highest. Actually shot it further than the Hungarian, both Hungarians, including the 75-pound draw weight Hungarian and the English longbow. Now, according to what I mentioned beforehand, this is actually what you would expect, because the Assyrian's a pretty light limb bow. So is the Scythian, and the Turkish is somewhere maybe right in the middle, but appears to be a light limb bow to me. The heavy arrow, weighing about 450 grains, is actually where the surprises started to come in. There really isn't that much of a change in the pattern, and all arrows showed about an average of 15% drop in efficiency, or distance fired when actually shooting this. And they really showed it across the board. Some were affected more than others. As you can see, the Scythian and the Assyrian bows really did drop a lot of distance when shooting with the heavy arrow. And the Turkish, Hungarian, English longbow, and really both the Hungarians really didn't show too much of a variation, with the lower weight Hungarian dropping a bit more. Really hard to sort of tease out a pattern of this, and I'm wondering if it's because the weight of the arrow was actually not enough to show that much of a difference. When we look at the bamboo arrow, things get really weird. For almost every single bow, except for the English longbow, the bamboo arrow, which weighed in at 750 grain weight, so a pretty significantly heavy arrow, actually shot further than the lighter arrow, 450 grain weight, and started to approach and come about halfway the distance between the heavy arrow and the light arrow. This is really interesting, and I don't actually know why this is. Some theories behind it could be that the four-fletch configuration is actually causing the arrow to hold its height a bit better and actually go a little bit further. The straight fletch configuration could also cause a little bit less drag and cause it to go a little bit further as well. I don't really know the true answer to this, but it's very interesting. In reality, what I think is going on here is there's just a lot of lurking variables that are actually affecting this and making the comparison I was looking for isn't really being teased out very well. One of the most obvious ones here is that, as you can see, the Scythian shot the furthest in all three tests. Now, the Scythian is actually the bow I shoot and practiced with, so this is the bow I'm most experienced with. The Turkish was next, and that's the bow I used to use, so it could be just a matter of experience, which is really interesting because it shows that the distance an arrow can travel is actually really heavily influenced by how used to the bow you are and how much practice you have with that particular weapon. So it's very interesting because it shows that your skill can actually really overcome some of the weaknesses of the bow. Another thing that's interesting is the 75-pound Hungarian, which you would expect to go much further than the next lightest bow, the 58-pound Scythian, really didn't. And one of the reasons for this, and I kind of mentioned this in the introduction, is that the 75-pound Hungarian is a horn bow, and it's really, really sensitive to temperature and humidity. And it's the last bow we shot on, from what you see in the video, is an extremely, extremely hot day. So in reality, and I noticed it when I unstrung it, that bow probably had a lot of relaxation of the strength in the limbs. I probably should have shot it first. in other words, to really get that full power out of it. It still shot pretty well, and it still shot pretty far, but I think it probably was relaxed on the limbs a lot. We got the data we needed to figure out how to set up the scoring to see how far these bows can go. Each of them is really approaching 200 yards, which is pretty good for some of these bows, and it'll be fun to see what happens at the event. If you enjoyed our video, come on out September 15th and you'll have the opportunity to compete in a flight shoot. In addition, you can add your bow's data to this experiment and see how your bows compare.